The most difficult conversation I had was with my father. We haven't really talked about that. Do you want to?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. When I
fell for you.
When I was having those conversations, my mom was and this is kind of how I lead in the book. So I'm going to give you the first chapter. There's still some great things in there. But in the first chapter, I talk about going and cleaning those up, and my mom, I called her up and told her I was going to clean up my relationships, and she goes, "What does that mean?" And I told her. She started laughing. She goes, "Well, I want to hear the stories." And so I'd have a couple, I'd call her up, and man, she was just my confidant. We'd talk about it and laugh and do whatever. And then come 2.5 years, I was on next to my last one. I called her. I said, "Mom, I'm going to talk to my old boss tomorrow in Houston, Texas. And it's my last conversation." She goes, "Call me as soon as you're done," because she knew the background on it.
Yeah.
And it was a difficult conversation, but it fell into those one and done. One person I had to go back to 7 different times. So there's no perfection in this. But my boss was a one and done, and it was amazing. He said, "I really love what you're doing now. I think you're meant for it." He goes, and we just cleaned everything up. I came out to the parking lot and called my mom, and I said, "This is how it went." And she said, "Oh, that's great." She goes, "Who's your last conversation with?" I said, "It's Dad." And she said, "Oh, no, you don't." Now, she's been my confidant. And
are they divorced, or are they still in a relationship?
They have the best relationship I've ever seen.
And you had a rift there with your dad.
Yeah, and I said, "I've got to have a conversation with Dad." And she said,
"No, you don't."
"No, you don't." She goes, I said, "Mom, I have to. I've saved him for last because I knew it was probably impossible, but I've got to do this. I can't ask people to do what I'm asking them to do if I'm not willing to do it." And it's been 2.5 years. She said, "Son, those people don't know your dad. I'll never see you again." But she was serious. And I'll give you a little background on my father. When I was growing up, when I was very young, my dad was a hellraiser. And then my dad went off to Vietnam. He came back when I was 5 years old, and he was a very different man. And within a year of him coming back, my dad, the pendulum swung the other way. He became an old-time Southern Baptist, hellfire and brimstone, walk up and down the aisle, screaming preacher. Now, some people know what I'm talking about. Some people don't have a clue. My dad was almost cultish. I'll give you a little background so you can get a real view of it. When we lived in some really small towns in East Texas. One town I lived in, we were 15 to 20 miles away from the nearest grocery store, which was in Nacogdoches.
Okay.
So Nacogdoches is a big town to me. Well, Nacogdoches had a public library. My dad would check out books and records and burn them on the steps of the Nacogdoches Public Library. What? That's who my dad was. Okay. So, needless to say, I couldn't kind of wait to get out on my own. I've been on my own since I was 17. I ended up going to Baylor University, Baptist school. You think my dad would be happy? My dad was so mad because he felt Baylor was too wild.
Yeah, I don't think of Baylor as a wild college.
I know, it's not. And but I went to one other story around that. My junior year at Baylor, my dad called me. I said, "Son, you need to come home this weekend." I said, "What are you talking about? Y'all are now 5 hours away, 6 hours away in East Texas again." "I'm not driving home in the middle of the semester. What's going on?" "Well, we're meeting with a lawyer on Saturday, and we need you here." "Why are you meeting with a lawyer?" "We're disowning your sister, Wendy, who I told you about, and the blah, blah." And I was like, hold on, what's going on? And my dad said, "Well, we found out she's dating a guy who has a terrible reputation. We found out she's drinking beer and I'm so sorry about that. He's drinking beer and alcohol, and we can't have that in the family because that's..."
Wendy's partner was drinking beer?
Yeah.
And alcohol?
Yeah.
Was he dancing too?
Exactly.
Your dad was like the preacher in Footloose?
Oh, no. In the book I talk about, you take Footloose, 10 to 100 times worse.
No dancing. Oh, no alcohol. No. Okay.
Burning records.
He was burning records on the library
Yeah. So
stairs.
I told my dad, I said, "Dad," I went and talked them out of it. But I want you to think about, at Baylor, I'd already become quite the partier, which I didn't tell you. And Do you think
the apple didn't fall far from the tree? It sounds like little Hellraiser over here.
Right. Yeah. And so, how safe was it for me to talk to my dad? It wasn't, but I was never going to do that until I did this.
Oh my God.
And so Mom knew the whole transformation with me. She goes, I said, Mom, I said, you know how you've raised me. I've got to be in alignment with what I'm saying.
Yep.
And she got real quiet. She goes, if it helps, let him know I've known the entire time. Now, I always was straight with my mom, but it's the only thing she kept from Dad, and I told you they had a great relationship.
Yeah.
I said, Mom, I'm not going to throw you under the bus. She said, Greg, if it keeps you in my life, let him know.
That she knew?
I did that the whole time. And so I said, give him the phone. He got on the phone. I said, hey, it's your son. Hey. I never talked to him on the phone. I said, hey, I said, I've got a roommate. My roommate's gone and going to be on the road in 2 weeks. Why don't you come in and spend a week with me? Let's get to know each other again. I'd love to catch up and get to know you because I never spent any time with you since high school. And he lit up. He said, I'll be there in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, that car pulls in. And as soon as it pulls in, my stomach's just doing 360s. And I'm shaking because I'm like, here it is, my final conversation, and I don't know how to start it. Even though I prepared,
You were going to have it on day one of this week-long trip?
Oh, yeah.
Dang, boy, if that didn't go well, you still had...
Well,
you might just turn right around.
Yeah. Well, here's what happened. He came in, and it's awkward. We don't know how to talk. We never really spent any time with each other.
Yeah.
And he said, well, where's your attic? So I pulled down the attic thing.
Where's your attic?
Yeah. He's going to check out the house. He'd never been there.
Okay.
So he's checking out the house, and I'm in the living room. I'm just like, why did I do this? Why didn't I? I could have gone there and had the conversation. Anyway, he comes down, and it's weird. And he looks at me, and he takes a left into the kitchen, and it hits me. I left something in the refrigerator.
Beer.
And he pulls open that refrigerator. He goes, whose beer is this in here? You shouldn't have a roommate that drinks.
Uh-oh.
And everything in me went, blame it on your roommate.
That's right.
And I almost did, but before I could get the next word out of my mouth, he goes, son, I trained you better than that. You don't let alcohol pass the plane of your front door. I'll stick around an extra day, and when he gets back, we'll kick him out together.
Kick him out?
Oh, yeah. It's like, Dad, calm down. I'm not going to calm down. I said, Dad, that's my beer. Sit down. I need to tell you some things. And I proceeded to tell him everything. You wouldn't tell the most liberal parent in the world, let alone the most conservative.
Yeah.
And after about 15 minutes, he just goes, stop. But he was crying. He was in tears. And he looked at me. He said, son, I know what you're doing. I will always love you. But I do not like you. I do not like the man you become. You're a hypocrite and a liar, and I don't care if I ever see your face again.
Whoa.
And when he said that, something snapped in me, and I had what's called a repressed memory of something I had realized he had done his entire life that he preached against. And I nearly through that said, I'm the hypocrite, you're the hypocrite. Now, what do you think would have happened?
That wasn't going to go well.
It would have gone into a downward spiral.
Yeah.
But I stopped, and all I could think of is, what is it I really want? And all I could think of in that moment, I want to hurt him really bad right now. But that's not what I really wanted. Remember our short term?
You wanted a connection.
But,
you wanted to relate.
And even in that moment, it was the first time it hit me. Even preparing for it, I didn't realize this. I'd always wanted a real relationship with my dad.
Yeah.
And when I got clear on what I wanted, the next question was, what's my role in this? And you know what? Dad was right. I was a hypocrite. Many times we'd be in someone's house and I'd say, you see the beer they had over there, or the wine in the trash, acting like I didn't drink. I acted like I didn't do. I always kept that from him. I was a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Why do you think someone, a reasonable, rational, decent person would act like he's acting like right now? Well, from his perspective right now, he feels like a failure as my father and as my minister.
Yeah.
And what do I do right now to move toward what I really want? And it hit me. I looked at him. I owned it. I said, Dad, you're right. I'm a hypocrite to you. Mom knows what I do. Wendy knows. I've lived my life out in the open. That's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to get things cleaned up. I can see you're ready to walk out the door. That's not what I want. You've always been a man of your word. You just got here. You said you'd stay a week. Will you give me just 3 more days? Stay 3 days, but if you stay these 3 days, we have to talk about everything we've kept from each other. So if we never see each other again in this lifetime, at least we'll know who we were to each other.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, he's still crying. He stood up. He goes, I'll give you the 3 days. Then I never want to see your face again. It's not going to make a difference. I can't look at you right now. You make me sick. Turns around, walks out, and slams the door. So how did that go?
Day one.
Didn't go the way I wanted. He goes for like 2 hours on a drive. He comes back, slams the door. Okay, let's do this talking thing. So that's my audience.
Yeah.
But we sat down.
That's a tough room.
It was. But we sat down and we started talking about everything
Yeah.
with no judgment, knowing that it might end.
Yeah.
And we opened up, and it was the first time I had ever connected with my father. The next day, we got up, had breakfast, lunch, dinner, hung out till like midnight talking. Next day, by the end of that third day, I was so mad I'd waited 2.5 years to have this conversation. I was so mad I waited to have him last because I was so connected with my father. I went to bed that night knowing that, hey, he's going to be around. This is awesome. I get up the next day and I come out of my room and he's standing at the door with his luggage. Whole attitude reverted back to day one. He said, told you I was leaving after 3 days. I'm ready to go. And my heart sunk.
Mm-hmm.
I walked him out. He throws his luggage in the trunk. He closes it. He turns, looks me dead in the eye, says nothing. Gets in his car. He drives away, and he dies 3 years later. Now, I tell this in my classes.
Did you connect with him in those 3 years?
Well, and here's what happened.
Okay.
In that moment.
Wait for it.
Wait for it.
Phil.
Yeah, but
I can't stand suspense.
But here's what happened. In that moment, there was no solace for how I felt.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I knew I had done the right thing.
Yeah.
But there was no one patting you on the back. Good job. This is great. Everything's going to be super. And I tell people all the time, I'm not on the line for your conversations. You are.
That's right.
I'm on the line for mine. In that moment, I knew I did my best. But I also found out that day you have no idea what can happen when you begin to respectfully speak your truth. Because that car, after it left, stopped about halfway down the street. And it sat there, and Dad backs up, pulls in. I'm still there. He jumps out. He's still crying. He runs to me. He bear hugs me and says, son, I love you, and I like you. I like the man you become. He said, honestly, I wanted you to be a preacher. You like to party way too much for that. He said, I'll always be on you about the alcohol because you know it ruined my family. I said, Dad, you never even shared that with me till this week. Yeah. He said, could we start this relationship you're talking about? And once you get 3 days ago, it's a conversation. Now it's a relationship.
Yeah.
I said, what do you want? He said,
talking thing.
Yeah, he said, come see me in 2 weeks.
Oh.
And I knew what he meant because when I went home, I spent time with Mom. I said, Dad, I'll be there in 2 weeks to see you.
Yeah.
Walked in. 2 weeks later, I walk in. First thing he said, you're not still drinking beer, are you? And you know how couldn't push my buttons anymore. I walked up to him, I looked at him, and I gave him a hug. My dad was a hugger. I said, I get how painful your childhood was with your dad being an alcoholic. I said, if alcohol ever becomes a problem for me, would you be a rock and just help me? He said, yeah. He never brought it up again. And we started this relationship. We started getting to know each other. And it was back and forth. And then about 6 months into it, I said, Dad, I'd like to can I get permission to use our story in my class? He said, what story? I said, here's our story and here's how I'd like to tell it. And I told it just like I'm telling you. And the first thing he said was, son, I'm not that way anymore.
Oh.
And what I tell people all the time, you have no ability to change someone else, but if you change how you do things, they may change how they engage with you. And that's where he changed. But I need people to hear, I changed too.
Yeah.
And it was a dance, the dance you've been talking about, back and
changed the
forth.
dance.
We both danced in a different way. And it was an amazing relationship. And before my dad passed away, he became one of my best friends. And we never saw eye to eye on so many things. Yeah. But there was such a completion there. And he asked me to speak at his funeral. One of the hardest things I did, one of the most cleansing as well, because all that, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I taught Crucial Conversations in thousands of classes over 20 years. Yeah. I saw people have breakthrough after breakthrough, and it's the application of what they learned that so many people don't do, and that's what the application can do. That's my commitment to people, is to make sure you live this life on this planet trying to have the relationships you can have, create them to be the way you want them to. It takes skill, it takes effort. It's not easy, and you might not get the reward you think. One of the things I tell people, many of these conversations, I haven't gotten what I wanted. But in the end, whatever shows up has actually been better each time.
The Rolling Stones were right all along.
You can't always get what you want.
But if you try sometimes, you just might find.
You get what you need.
That's right.
And that's very true. Yeah.
I'm so touched, Craig.
Well, thanks.
I noticed tears in my eyes, and I don't know. There's a jubilation with it too.
Oh, there is.
A sadness and a jubilation.
Yeah, yeah. And to me, it was interesting because I went through years of therapy, as you can imagine, because, and then I went from years of therapy to finding a landmark to finding a mastery course to doing all this work myself. And I look back and I remember before I did any of this work, I had a constant complaint about my father, about my life, about everything else. Now I see it all as a beautiful joy. Even at one point, we'll say this, I've said it on a couple of things. My dad was, spare the rod, spoil the child. And
he's a spanker.
Well, not only that, I mean, it took my therapist, I'll never forget when I went to therapy, he said, "So you don't think your father abused me?" "Mom, my father loved me. I knew deep down my father loved me." Mm-hmm. And then I'll never forget, he comes in when I came in a couple sessions later. He goes, "Man, I was reading the Austin paper today." He said there was this kid that was beaten. He was bleeding and all this. And he goes, "Is that abuse?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "There's no kid in the paper. I was talking about you from our session 2 weeks ago." He had to disassociate me from it. Yeah. And that was a kind of a lead in to all the stuff that came along. But here's the level that went to after learning. I went on a friend of mine, Matt O'Hare, we went sailing on a boat out in the British Virgin Islands. Just a couple of us went out. It was a lot of fun. But one night out there, I had this epiphany about the abuse I'd gone through, because it was always something that had stayed with me. Yeah. And I gave it up that night, and this was after that. I sat down with my dad. I said, "Hey," I said, and he was about 6 months from passing away. He had cancer and everything. I said, "Dad," I said, "we talked about the abuse before, and his father had abused him, and one of the things, even
it's a cycle of violence."
Well, yeah, exactly. And one of the things, even my dad didn't hide it though. It was because I remember running at a church picnic, and my dad told me to stop running, and I did it again. About 5 minutes later, he pulls his belt off and beats me in front of the entire church at picnic. And then when he finished, he looked at everyone and goes, "That's how you discipline your kids. Some of you need to learn that." That was where
that's
my dad
how pervasive it is.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Violence is pervasive.
It was like that's what you do. It was interesting because later my dad changed that whole view. Of course, he grew, he matured, he saw it. Mm-hmm. But I came to him one day and I said, "Dad, I think you're still holding on to how you hit me when I was little." And he just started bawling. He goes, "Greg, I'm so ashamed." He goes, "There's not a day goes by that it doesn't bother me." And I grabbed him by the shoulder. My mom's sitting right there, and he was in bed. He's sick with cancer. I grabbed him by the shoulders. I said, "Dad, thank you for every time you hit me." And he went back in shock. And I went, I'm not saying it was right. I'm saying I let it go and it doesn't bother me anymore. And what that also did, it made me more sensitive, more open, more understanding about what's right, what's wrong, no matter what it is in the face of what people say their God is. I said it made me more relatable to people who have been through abuse, because I can't tell you how many people have come up and shared with me their abuse when I've never told this story, but there's a connection that can happen. I said that never would have happened had I not gone through that.
Yes.
And I am thankful today that I went through that. Not that I would want to do it again, but what came out of that when I changed how I looked at it, change the way you look at things and the way things you look at change. Wayne Dyer.
Change your mind, change the world.
Yeah. And in that, when I changed how I looked at it, because I couldn't change it, reliving that trauma did nothing for me.
No.
Changing the view of what I learned from it changed everything.
That's reframing.
It is. But we all have that ability. One gives you life. One gives you more death. A death, a pain, a suffering. What we always say is pain is inevitable. Yeah. Suffering is optional.
I said this yesterday when I was talking to James Ochoa, that our history can be a backpack that we wear, filled with weight, filled with rocks and bricks and stones, and it can weigh us down,
right?
Or it can be a platform that we put in front of us so we can see better,
right?
See further, have a better vantage point, to be able to see other people and their pain, to empathize and have compassion.
Oh, absolutely.
And I believe that.
That's the connection, because we've been through that. There's that commonality.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though, I was never sexually abused, to me that would be, oh my gosh, and then there are people who have done that. I've seen people stay in that space suffering over and over. And I've seen other people take that grief and go work through it. What's the difference? Someone got help and did the work, because I don't think getting help
really important.
You've got to. You can't do it alone. When people try to do that, that's one of the biggest things. When people are a victim of something, it's not. You don't want to share it. I didn't want to share those.
There's
things.
Tremendous shame.
Yeah, there's tremendous shame. But if you can maybe trust one person out there that's trustworthy, and open up and get some help, because I think that's the other thing I find over and over. You can't change what happened. You can change how you live with it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you wake up and you realize that the house you live in is a haunted house.
Yeah.
And it can take a while to say, hey, I don't want to live in a haunted house.
Yeah.
And I'm choosing to live in this haunted house. Yeah. And what I experienced.
Right.
The haunted house still's there at 503 Poplar Grove, 15302. That's where I was raised, that house where I experienced abuse. And it's still there. And it might still be haunted, but I don't live there anymore.
Right. How did you get through? Because we've talked.
I'm still getting through it.
Yeah.
I still remember I experienced the cycle of violence. I think a lot of folks experience the cycle of violence.
Oh, yeah.
Parents are stressed to the max.
Right.
And they didn't have good role models. And I don't think my parents did either.
Mine didn't, for sure. That's one of the things I would always say is I looked at my grandmother and I was like, oh, I got the lottery, because she was worse than anything. She's one person. Don't have anything against her. Just can't believe I came from that, and don't want to have anything. I felt sorry for my dad, because it
got
comes
honest. Hurt people.
Yeah, absolutely.